I wanted to get your thoughts on Markelle Fultz as well. I read your article and I thought it was really insightful.
Thank you.
Fultz is a player that just seems like he was forgotten in NBA history, and he was in the midst of a resurgence. And I just want to kind of take our listeners through kind of the journey of Markelle Fultz from being this number one pick, all of the pressure, all of the scrutiny, just really being forgotten about, and we're really one of the cool stories of this year was seeing his rise as a leader of this Orlando Magic team, only to be derailed by a torn left ACL. Can you walk us through that? And then also, I mean, a torn ACL is a brutal injury to recover from, but do you think he has what it takes to recover and still be on his trajectory he was on before he got hurt?
Well, this is going to sound kind of morbid, but if you want some silver lining of this injury, at least this is a normal injury. This is an injury like players tear their ACLs all the time. NBA teams, medical staffs have so much experience dealing with like players rehabbing from torn ACLs, and more guys now, whether you look at somebody like Zach LaVine or there's a couple of other guys recently who have come back and been fine. A torn ACL is not the like career-ending injury that it was 20 years ago or something. And so at the very least, like at least this is an injury where like it sucks for him, obviously, and it's it's a bummer for him and from his personal story that he had this weird early start to his career and now he finally has found a home in Orlando and he's having a good year, and then this happens. That sucks for him, but at least this is an injury where we know how the rehab is going to go from this injury because it's a pretty common injury, as opposed to those shoulder injuries that he had in Philly, where like the thing you have to remember about Markelle Fultz is when he was the number one pick out of Washington, he was a 41% three-point shooter. That was like one of his best skills. And then he gets to the NBA and it looks like he completely forgot how to shoot. And it was to the point where people were saying, is it a mental thing? Does he have the yips? Does he just like... And then they kind of ended up finding out months later there were all of these different, tests that they ran. They couldn't identify this injury. And then they realized, okay, he does have this weird, shoulder injury that it took us a while to diagnose. At least with the ACL, it's like he tore his ACL. We know exactly what the injury is. This is what the surgery is. This is what the rehab is going to look like. We know how to deal with this. Like, I am not that worried about him coming back and being fine in general. It just from a personal standpoint just sucks for him, considering how the career that he's had so far, where anytime you're the number one pick, especially going on to a team like the Sixers, where at the time, Joel Embiid had just had his rookie season and Ben Simmons was about to make his debut because he had missed his actual rookie season. And so there was a lot of hype around that team. And then Markelle Fultz has this shoulder stuff going on where he just completely, his shot is completely broken. And then he becomes kind of, and especially the fact that, they did that trade with the Celtics, and then the Celtics took Jason Tatum with their pick, and Jason Tatum looks like a future all-star immediately in his rookie season. So from that standpoint, he kind of got a raw deal in terms of how he was treated by some, fans in Philly, especially considering that the trade was made by the Colangelos, who had replaced Sam Hinkie, who's like the beloved guy there. And so there becomes this whole thing of after what happened with him happened, it was like, oh, well, Sam Hinkie wouldn't have done that trade, or Sam Hinkie would have done, he kind of got all this stuff projected onto him that has nothing to do with him. And then, he gets traded to Orlando, and he basically had one good season last year in Orlando, where he basically had, he had one good season, and they rewarded him with this contract extension, where it was a show of faith that, they were going to, they believed in him, and it was paying off. And this year, I think the thing that's cool about it is his shot still hasn't come back. He was still shooting below 30% from 3-point range, but he was still finding so many other ways to be effective as a playmaker, as a defender. He kind of had figured out a way to reinvent himself after all this adversity and become a useful NBA player. So just from a personal standpoint, it sucks to just see that happen to him when he just seems like he's starting to finally put it all together.
For sure. Hopefully he can bounce back.